literally on the way here. On they are on the, yeah, the bus is, it should be pulling up any moment. Well, Dr. Pittman would like to wait, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, we're just waiting momentarily for our students to arrive. The bus is on campus and they should be pulling in shortly. So just allow us a few more moments, please.
Well, I fly under the radar, so to speak. You guys have to do like 3 years of training. They have real good luck. No, I work with the Mississippi River Trust and the Lower Mississippi River Conservation. Restoration in the river. And I've seen your engineering nature, and you wrote up about Redmond. We're about to get, hopefully we're about to get money for two more. In July. Okay. Well, we've done 103 miles. We're working with the Nature Conservancy. Coffee Point. Which they're very cost effective. Unfortunately, I mean, like,
Okay, sir, our students are entering in. The Academy of Innovations. The Academy of Innovations. Go across that way. Okay, as our students take their seats, we will begin. Very good. Well, good morning to everyone. For those of you that do not know me, my name is Cynthia Banks, and I am Discover, Deliver, and we demonstrate the power of ERDC. So welcome to our 2019 Earth Day celebration. Our theme this year is protecting our species. So today, you'll learn more about the million of to our planet. Today is Tuesday, April the 23rd, and you're here at ERDC Headquarters Auditorium, and we look forward to an informative and a fun day. Please raise your hand if you do not have a program, because we want to make sure everyone has one. If none, I will go ahead and proceed with the program. Before I go on to our greetings, I just want to make a couple of announcements related to our safety and our security, our auditorium where you entered, and take a left and go outside of the north entrance and gather in the area outside. If you need a restroom break, you can also exit the auditorium, turn right, make another right, and the restrooms are down the hall. So certainly throughout the day, because we have events and activities for our students, please be careful today and be safe. We have exhibits that have live animals, and you'll be outside, so just take all precautions to be safe. I just wanted to make those announcements before we proceed. And now we'll move to our director, Dr. Pittman, and he will be followed by our ERDC commander, Colonel Beckman. Dr. Pittman.
Well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Happy Earth Day. I think it might have been yesterday, actually, but we're going to call it Earth Week. How about that? And welcome to ERDC in Vicksburg. I want to thank all of you for coming today. We have some special guests here today. We actually have one of the top leaders in the state. He just happens to be the mayor of Vicksburg, Mississippi, Mayor George Flaggs. Thank you, sir. He's right here on the front. I want to thank our partners from the Fish and Wildlife Service, sir. I look forward to hearing what you talk about this morning. You got some great slides, I know that. I think it's going to go great. I think we have the National Park Service, I think, in the ERDC. I want to thank all of our ERDC team members here today. Raise your hand. Anybody from ERDC here? Hey, that's good. And we might have some folks, are we streaming? I don't know. So thank you all. Everything that you do in ERDC, by the way, to discover, develop, and deliver new ways to make this earth better and safer. Corps of Engineers. We've been around since 1775 helping to protect this planet. And so we have a lot of missions. No matter what mission we have, whether it's civil works, helping our nation's waterways, the Army Corps of Engineers. So we have a lot of military installations. We have to protect a lot of threatened and endangered species on military installations, for instance. We have a huge international mission. We're in 100 countries worldwide. So we try to protect the environment all over the world, literally. We do a lot of work with others. We work with them on these sorts of missions. We have a huge geospatial mission, so we're mapping the world. So we're trying to figure out where everything is around the world. And of course, we have a contingency operation mission, which means when a hurricane to go fix the electrical grid there, because it wiped out the entire electrical system in Puerto Rico a couple years ago. They called the Corps of Engineers to do that. And everything that we do in the Corps since environment. And so, as a matter of fact, we have a doctrine now. It's called the Environmental Operating Principles, EOPs we call them, what we're going to do when we work with the environment. Let me give you a few examples. We're going to foster sustainability as just the way we do business. Sustainability means at least as good as when we found it. We want to proactively consider environmental consequences in everything that we do. We want to create mutually supporting economic and environmental sustainable solutions. So if you want to do an economic thing, it does economically. Those are both, they can be the research and development to support those missions in everything that we do. As a matter of fact, the way I like to say it is we help to understand, predict, and shape the world around us, everything on this earth. That's what we get to do. Let me give you an example. So we had some threatened and endangered, one of our big military training bases, and it was shutting down our ability to do training for our soldiers on the military base. And so what did we do? First, we tried to understand the habitat and predict how our training and how their habitat was going to coexist so that we could do our training and we could protect that species at the same time. So guess what we're doing today? We were shut down, and today we can train on all that land out there, and it's actually a sanctuary for the golden cheek warbler today. So you can do these things mutually together to benefit the environment and the nation. It's going to be on Facebook. It's going to be a big hit, but we're going to reveal it live here right now for you, for this audience. So if the video will work, we're going to show it to you right now. Hello, my name is David Pittman, and I'm the Chief Scientist and Head of Research and Development for the Army Corps of Engineers, and I'm Director of Ways in the Army Corps of Engineers and the sustaining and improving this environment around us. So our research cuts across multiple disciplines: engineering, science, physics, biology, chemistry, doesn't matter, and it's global in its reach. One of the ways that ERDC supports the war is how we train and fight on our installations. We have to be able to work with threatened and endangered species. We have to have mobility in a way that protects and sustains the environment and the communities that surround our installations. That's what we do in the Arctic. So whether it's access to the Arctic or landing vertical takeoff and landing helicopters, ospreys in the desert, Arctic Technologies enables a warfighter to do what they have to do. So we work with our partners both nationally and internationally on a concept called engineering with nature, where we work with nature to help protect and restore our nation's wetlands. We protect against coastal storm damage while balancing in that with our need to do navigation on our rivers. Not only do we have to understand the environment around us, we have to model and predict what's going to happen. We have some of the best modelers and computer scientists and fastest computers in the world. So we can actually predict what's going to happen when a hurricane hits, what the impacts are going to be on the surge, on the vegetation, on the plants, what flooding is going to happen. We need this kind of information to help protect in the future, to help prevent these sort of impacts from happening. Our commitment to protect, sustain, and improve the environment is vital to our mission to discover, develop, and deliver new ways to make the world safer and better every day. Hey, there it is. If they can just find a better spokesman, we're going to nominate that for an Academy Award right there. Discover, develop, world safer and better every day. So I want to thank all of you for everything you do to protect, sustain, and improve this environment around us. And I want to give a special shout out right now to the persons who are responsible for today, for this very first Earth Day in ERDC's history. We're only 20 years old. Victoria McCoy for putting this together for us today. So can we give them a big hand? It was their vision leadership. Cynthia came to me a year ago and said, "Hey, Dr. Pittman, can we do an Earth Day celebration?" And I said, "Sure, will you be in charge?" She said, "Yes, I'll do it." And happy Earth Day. Welcome, everybody. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome everyone here to Earth Day as well. Welcome to ERDC. And I wanted to, again, echo what Dr. Pittman said about 27 July. And immediately, Cynthia came up and said, "Hey, we want to do an Earth Day celebration." Same question, will you lead it for us? And she said, absolutely. So that really make us a world-class organization. So thank you for that. I wore my Earth Day colors today. I'm wearing black and brown and olive drab. So all here for Earth Day. I'd like to special greetings to Mayor Flagg, Paul Mluckart. Good to see you, Dr. Bridges. Greetings, students from the Academy of Innovation. All right, great to have you here today. You know, see some of you that are on the robotics team here, so very impressed with what you do in the Academy of Innovation. And we need to have a pipeline here, Dr. Pittman, from the Academy. Go off to get your degrees, advanced degrees in here. Okay. So the first Earth Day was 22 April 1970. This is the 49th year. I think that's great. This year's theme is Protect Our Species. So we have an incredible amount of intelligence and ability in our species on Earth. If we can figure out how to put a man on the moon, if we can figure out how to send him over a rover to Mars, International Space Station, figure out how to survive. But I would contend that our existence here on Earth is very delicate. You know, humans, how long have we been on Earth? First species of humans was Homo erectus, 2 million years ago. How old is the Earth? Any guesses? Years. So humans have only been on the Earth for 1/100% of the period of, so if this is how long the Earth has been around, humans have been there like that. Okay, and I would contend that the changes that we've done to the Earth's surface in that amount of time out of this has been very profound. We've really changed the Earth's surface, not just the surface of the Earth, but the atmosphere. And so that's why I say that our existence here is very delicate. The dinosaurs went away 60 million years ago, probably not the other things. So I would say our existence is very delicate here. And if you think about how we've changed the Earth, very significant. Global warming, everyone talks about global warming, and there's a debate. It's been proven, but I don't think they've increased by 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit since 1880 till now. So what does that mean? The temperature in Vicksburg today is going to be 78 degrees. So in 1880, on this same day, so for us, that's not very significant. We can adapt to that, right? But for areas of the, like the polar ice cap, where just on the Earth, like polar bears and other species that are surviving in that small amount of temperature difference. So, and that relates to the carbon that we release into the atmosphere. We need energy. I'm not contending that we go back and we try to reverse progress, because progress is good, innovation is good. But we need to also keep an eye on protecting our animal species extinction that we know of. And Dr. Pittman read off a couple of the species that are endangered: the red-cockaded woodpecker, the golden-cheeked warbler, the gopher tortoise, and the Indiana-cheeked warbler. So, but I remember at Fort Bragg, there were big areas.
At about 10 billion people in 2050 by 2100, and even then, we don't know if it's going to stop. So we've got to feed people. We've got to do it efficiently, and we've got to do it with the ecosystem in mind, and that's what we're going to talk about. Next slide. So we not only made nature more crowded, but it's increasingly diminished and fragmented because of our activities. Y'all probably haven't seen this, or if you have, I applaud you. But on your left there, that's the historic Mississippi River floodplain in our area. And you can see it was quite large. It was over 100 miles wide in some places. On the right is the current Mississippi River floodplain. Very much diminished. In a few places, it may be 10 miles wide. Floodplains have a purpose. Floodplains are the kidneys of our water system. They filter nutrients, they filter pollutants. They do great services to them. These are called ecosystem services. You'll hear this in the future as you advance your careers. So we've diminished this, and one of the results of this, you may have heard of the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. That's directly related to this in large part. Not totally, but directly related to the loss of our ability to process nutrients. So today what we're doing to address a dead zone is we're trying to do better with our agricultural sciences, cut down on the amount of pollutants that we put out there, the amount of nutrients that we need. Now I'm going to tell you these nutrients don't affect our river because we got a muddy river. And so as nutrients come down, they need sunlight to become a problem. And when they become a problem is when sun can penetrate the water, algae can eat these nutrients, the algae explode, then they die, they sink to the bottom of the Gulf Coast of the sea, and that's where they form a problem. Our river's too turbid. Now, a lot of people think muddy water's not good. Muddy water's a good thing here. It's also got sediment. That's what drives our ecosystem, is water and sediment. So we want to keep our sediment, we want to keep our mud. Next slide, please. So let's talk real briefly about river engineering. So we've got to reduce floodplain, but we've also got all this engineering going on out there, and we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But it looks pretty bad, doesn't it? I mean, all that rock out there, all these training structures, levees, but what it's done, it has reduced floodplain interactions, but it's also reduced the need for dredging in the river, and it's the way we control the river now. And we've found through our work together that we can use river engineering actually as a conservation tool. Next slide. So the other thing I want you to, let's talk about the good stuff now. The Mississippi River is absolutely beautiful. Now there's not too many places you can see it because there's woods in the Batcher, that's the land adjacent to the river between the levees. You can drive down a levee and all you see is woods. You can cross a bridge. There's only 3 or 4 bridges in the state of Mississippi across the Mississippi River. So there's not many places you can go out and see this. You've got to get on the river if you want to see how beautiful it is. And the reason it's beautiful is because we have a natural hydrograph. That means we get normal flooding. We can't control our floods with dams. We can't to a very small extent because there's so many dams in the tributaries and the headwaters. But when it comes right down to it, we're seeing like this year, I mean, we're having another, what is it? It's close to another 500-year flood, isn't it? So we can't control that. So a natural hydrograph protects our floodplain and keeps buildings from, people from building out there, people from developing it. So it looks very natural like this. You get a few hunting camps now where people are building fancy lodges. You'll have an occasional grain elevator. But for the most part, this is what the Mississippi River looks like. Next slide. We've even got a river operator now, a canoe guide out there called Pawpaw Canoe Company. That's John Rusky in the back there with the headband on. But he takes people up and down this river wherever you want to go for as long as you want to go. He builds his own 32-foot wooden canoes, cypress canoes, and it's really one of the only ways to really experience this river. Now, we get a lot of canoers and kayakers coming through that are floating the whole river from up north. They get down here and they get scared because they don't understand our river. So what I would suggest, if you ever want to get out there yourself, go with somebody like John Rusky. We've got some fish guides out there, like Blue Cat Guide Service here in Vicksburg that can take you out on the river. They know the river, they understand the river, you can learn the river, and then you can get out there on your own. Next slide. So we got a lot of potential out there in terms of recreational potential, and it constantly changes. Right now we've got high water. That's that big slide there. That was taken during the 2008 flood. We were out floating it. We called it Surfing the Crest. And but you can only camp on the high banks that if you can find. But you can go into the back swamp. You can get into the tree. You can canoe through the trees. You're 30 feet up in the top. It's leading people on canopy tours, they call them, by canoe. So you're touring a tree canopy by canoe. That's pretty cool. At low water, you get these huge, beautiful sand and gravel bars, just clean as a whistle, and they're covered with old river booty, as we call it, old boat debris, giant mammoths, giant sloths, the big giant buffaloes. Did you know there used to be llamas in Mississippi? There's llama bones out there. What else? Bear bones from South that now only occur in South America. Anyway, huge fauna out there that used to live here in North America. Next slide. And when you consider it's not only scenic, like I said, we've started studying this, and a lot of this comes from ERDC. In fact, this is an ERDC slide, and these guys pictured in this slide, they're scattered out here in this audience. But we've found that we have a pretty intact ecosystem, which amazed us all actually after we started looking at it. But we've had no in-channel faunal extinctions on the lower Mississippi River. We've had no documented extirpations. An extirpation is where a species becomes locally extinct. Like it might disappear in the Mississippi River, but it's still alive in the Missouri. So we've not even had a local extirpation. And this is just a scattering of some of the animals that are out there. It's also one of the most productive recreational and commercial fisheries in the United States. Pretty amazing. It's underutilized, but it's one of the most productive. Next slide. But what better way to judge the health of an ecosystem than by its endangered species? We've got 3 of those on the Mississippi River. This is the fat pocketbook mussel. Historically, it didn't live in the Mississippi River, and I'll talk more about that later. It's a prehistoric-looking fish. In fact, they've been around. It's one of the oldest types of fish around. They literally have been around since before the dinosaurs. And then we got this beautiful little migratory bird, the interior least tern, the smallest of the terns. Next slide. And I'm going to use them real quickly to demonstrate some of what we're doing here with ERDC and the remarkable recovery of these species. Okay, that's the pallid. That's the largest one we've ever caught in Mississippi. The range is from the Gulf of Mexico almost to Canada, up to the Yellowstone River, the upper Missouri River. Up there they grow, these animals grow to about 60 pounds. Down here, that's the largest one we've ever caught, about 24 pounds. I don't know if ERDC's caught anything bigger, but I don't think they have. We have 2 fish crews, mine and ERDC's. We're winning. There are no winners. Anyway, and again, you can see the navigable waters. You can see the dams, those little triangle things, like right here, all the way up there. That's been the big problem. So the reason the species was listed, next slide, please, is because of those dams and because of channel engineering. In 1990, the primary threat was considered to be recruitment failure. The fish survived, but they just couldn't reproduce and recruit. It was thought to be recruitment failure, and the cause of this recruitment failure was channel engineering throughout its range. Now, in 1990, when this species was listed, there were only 11 records from the entire Mississippi River. We started working together in 2000 with ERDC. And between them, their crew, and my crew, we've documented this. Knowledge is a tremendous weapon. When I used to, the colonel's eyes would glaze over, and they would say, there it goes. And he's ex-military. We said, that's what we're doing. And their eyes lit up, and suddenly we started talking the same language. Intelligence is done. It's filled in. We've been able to convert channel engineering. Here's the interior least up here to nest. They will arrive in the next few weeks, all the way from South America. Also, since they nest on the rivers, their habitats were changed by dam construction. We listed this in 1985. There were fewer than 2,000 birds range-wide, only about 300 from the LMRs, the lower Mississippi River. Again, the primary threat to this species was channel engineering. Today, our river supports 65% of the entire population. We've gone from 48 known nesting colonies to over 480 known nesting colonies today. And our Mississippi River is the epicenter of recovery for this bird. And in fact, the Fish and Wildlife Service is in the process of getting ready to delist this species, so you'll be hearing more about it in the near future. So again, we've converted the primary threat, channel engineering. Oh, and the way we did this, the primary management tool, guess what we found out when we study these things, when we conduct our intelligence, when we gather intelligence, is that the dikes don't harm the birds. The dikes actually make the sandbars higher so that they're less subject to flooding. That's why we've had such a huge boom down here. And then also they provide, as you're going to see, opportunities to use engineering to actually enhance the birds even more. Next slide. This is our third species of mussel. People don't know much about mussels, don't care much about mussels, but this is really cool. When this animal was first listed, I think this is a 1976 listing. We'll see in the next slide, but there were only like the black lines here, that's the historical range of this species. When we listed it, there were like 3 or 4 black dots or red dots in here. That was it. It was extirpated from up here or locally extinct. It had never been found in the Mississippi River, and now we've got it in the Mississippi River. It's come out of the Wabash and invaded the Ohio, and it's moving back up the next slide. So, when it was listed in 1976, again, the primary threat, channel engineering. And what we have found with our intelligence is that these guys are in the lower Mississippi River because they're invading dike fields where they never occurred before. They couldn't live in the Mississippi River the way it was historically. Now they're invading the dike fields, And they're invading the dike fields that we're now managing through ERDC and division and the districts. Next slide. So these are great success stories, and it's really neat because everything comes together around what we call secondary channels, islands and secondary channels. And this is what we were losing through river engineering, through protecting the banks, through funneling the water for deeper navigation channels, all this. We were beginning to lose these secondary channels, and that was the opportunity. These things are not only good for sturgeon, which have to have the island tips and the backwaters for their larvae to settle and spawn. That's why they're not in the Missouri River. There's no habitat. The interior least tern that nests on these isolated islands. And the fat pocketbook mussel, which gets in here. But also, this is where your migratory shorebirds come through. They need this in the fall when they're headed south. They need the food that's in there. Neotropical migrants this time of year, one of these canopy tours they're doing in the canoes, they're seeing tons and tons of neotropical migrant birds coming up from South America that are in the batcher now. I mean, if you look over here, all agriculture. In our little narrow batcher, it's a smorgasbord for a migrating bird, a hungry traveling bird. Also fisheries, this is where fish are spawned, and recreation. The Pawpaw Canoe Company, they love these secondary channels because they can get in there and they're not in the way of a barge. They're not going to get run over. It's nice and calm. Great place to fish, good place to camp, so on and so forth. So by dealing with the habitats of the endangered species, guess what? We're affecting everything. We're affecting fisheries, recreation, birds, you name it. It's a wonderful, it's a win-win situation. Next slide. All right, this is what we're dealing with. This is engineering. This is the stuff that used to be the bad guy. And it looks bad, right? This orange here, these are the dikes, these walls of dirt that hem the river in, that keep it from the natural floodplain. These crosshatch lines here, this is called revetment. I'm sure y'all are going to hear more about this on your tours today. But it's articulated concrete mat that's meant to fix the channel, to keep this channel from moving. The channel naturally migrates. This keeps it from doing so. These lines, this is the big deal here. These are the dikes. This is to funnel the flow in, to make a deep flow into this navigation channel so that we don't have these giant barges wrecking and spilling all this nasty stuff in our beautiful river. Very important to have them. There's over 774 dikes in the Mississippi River, in the lower Mississippi River alone. If you put them end to end, a dike is just a wall of rock from the bank out to a point in the channel that deflects the flow, right? You got that? If you put them end to end, there'd be over 300 miles, 300-mile-long stone wall. That's a lot of rock. But what they provide, when they first started doing this back in the 60s, a lot of the idea was to close off the secondary channels to put more water out into the navigation channel. And it worked very well to reduce dredging, save the taxpayers tons and tons of money. But what we started to do when we started recognizing the value of these secondary channels, we started putting holes in these dikes. Little holes. They don't affect the function of the dike, but what they do is they maintain flow through these areas. It can be done really cheaply. It can be done very fast. The Corps can do it at no cost when they're in there working, doing maintenance on these dikes. They require maintenance. So if they need to maintain a dike, they can go up there and say, hey, let's knock a hole in this one, see what happens. That's what we started doing. They did, I don't know how many. You know? No, that's us. That's the collaborative part. But the first few years, the Corps alone, they went out there during their routine maintenance. They knocked holes in 40 or 50 dikes, I believe, and where it was easy and where they had work. But then there's places where it's not easy and where they don't have work. So what we did, next slide, please. I think we're here. Yeah. So we have this organization that we put together, which is a nonprofit. It's mainly the states and their water quality organizations and their fish and wildlife branches. And that the lower Mississippi River states, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Missouri. Those are the states. So it's these guys, and then it's in partnership with like Fish and Wildlife Service, the Corps, EPA, NRCS. So it's this conglomeration. So what we can do is we can raise funds, either public or private funds, and then apply these funds to areas that the Corps doesn't have the money to work on. And I'm going to tell you, now, Corps has a huge budget, but they've got incredible needs in terms of maintaining this river. There's not enough money. So sometimes we have to help. And in the past, this was not something that people did willingly, states or other agencies. They wanted to blame the Corps for everything. Now we work in partnership. Next slide. So this is an example of the kind of thing we can do. We've done over 100 of these projects now. This is one of our early ones. This is the Loosahatchee Bar, we call it. This is Memphis, Tennessee, and there's the pyramid right there. If y'all are familiar with the big pyramid in Memphis, that's it. So it's right across the river from Memphis. This was a huge area, I think so, over 11 miles, that was inaccessible during low flows because of these dikes and closing structures. Fishermen couldn't get in here, and as you can see, it was dry. So you could not get in here, it was inaccessible. The terns nest on these points, and they would become connected to land so that the predators could get out there on them and eat them. So we needed some water to kind of disconnect them. The sturgeon couldn't get in here quite often, and many times, or if they did get in during high water, they were stranded when the waters went down, so you'd lose your young. The mussels couldn't live here because the water would go stagnant and they would die. So next slide. So we put in 11 notches in those dikes, and we restored the island integrity to more than 11 miles of channel. This is what it looked like when we started. This is the same, you can tell this is the same location. And there, it scoured the channel. It cost us very little money to do this. We turned it around in 1 year from conception to completion. Now, that doesn't mean a lot to you civilians, but anybody that works in government realizes projects like this usually take 10, 15, sometimes even 20 years to go through the process. So be able to turn this over so rapidly was also a huge change in paradigm, and at no expense to the Corps, even though they did monitor it. And we've done 100 projects, is that right? 100 miles, over 50 projects, something like that. And we've done 100 miles, thousands and thousands of acres of productive aquatic habitat that we did not have before. Next slide, please. So, that's about it. To sum it up, our river, the Lower Mississippi River, provides an example of hope for a crowded world. We can do this. We can manage, like the Colonel said. We have to do this, or we're not going to be around much longer. So this is something we've got to do. You guys, you youngsters, the next generation coming up, sorry, we're laying it all on your laps. But we're going to try to set a good example here for you. So we provide flood protection and efficient navigation for the largest and most productive agricultural area on the planet. We've had no aquatic extinctions, and we're getting recovery of endangered species by maintaining this busy place. And we've transformed flood protection and navigation engineering from a primary ecosystem threat. That's what, 10 years ago, everybody would have said this is an ecosystem threat. Now we've turned it into a conservation tool, thanks to the Corps of Engineers and the districts and divisions, and ERDC, I should have said. All right, you're going to have a lot of challenges, you youngsters, but you can do it. I guess that's the positive message here. It can be done. Next slide. This has been so successful, there's a table set up out here on the test team, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Endangered and Threatened Species team. This is a national program. They're taking this whole approach national. And actually, I'm helping them teach some workshops every now and then whenever they need our assistance, or our office is. Next slide. And I'm sure you're going to see more about this today on your tours. And that's the Engineering with Nature. Again, there's a booth set up outside for the Engineering with Nature that is incorporating these same kind of elements into what we do. And so that's it. And I'm sorry if I took a little long, but once I start talking, I just can't shut up. Especially about the Mississippi River.
Stand here for a moment.
Okay. Any questions?
We do have have time for a couple of questions, and we do have a mic runner. Miss Gloria has the microphone. If you have a question, please raise your hand and she will get the microphone to you. And if you would please just say your name and where you're from so we'll know who you are, and we'll field those questions as they come. Are there any questions at this time before we move on?
I did a great job, didn't I? No question. Or you're so confused you don't have any questions.
Let me ask you, if you could reflect on, the Fish and Wildlife Service nationally, and the Corps of Engineers too, because you know us quite well. If you could think about ways to expand what's been accomplished in the lower Mississippi River to other landscapes, because there are other needs.
Oh, yes.
As well as opportunities. What do you think about that and how that might be pursued, or where that might be pursued?
Well, we're already pursuing it. I think we could do a better job, but we're already doing it. Several years ago, actually shortly after we started this effort in 2000 with the Mississippi Valley Division, we also started working with the U.S. Army National Guard down on Camp Shelby. They had a very, very rare crayfish, and we were being pushed to list this as an endangered species. So we approached them, the Army National Guard and the Forest Service, because they rent the land from the Forest Service. And we said, you guys are the threat, but we can remove that if we just sit down and figure out how. And they did. They sat down with us. It didn't take very long at all. We came up with a plan. Now it's become a part of their general work plan, that they stay out of certain areas, that they protect certain areas. They use them as hostile areas so that they have to avoid, but they don't bomb them. So that's a good thing. And they've just worked it right into their training program. The way David was talking about the golden cheek warbler, that's been a huge success. We never had to list it, so that wasn't even under the Endangered Species Act. Red cockaded woodpecker is a great example. I think we're pretty close to downlisting that species. That's something, even 5 years ago, if you had talked about downlisting or delisting, people would have said you're crazy, it can never be done. But through working with the Marine Corps, I think some Army bases as well, we're doing great things with that species. We delisted a minnow down on the coast, I think it was a Naval Air Station, through this type of approach. And now we're working with the South Pacific Division. Well, we're not working directly with them. We did some training with them. They're working on the willow flycatcher and a couple species out west to do the same thing. And that's a really crowded area. That's a tough one. But it can be done. And this can be done pretty much anywhere with any species. And all it takes is, I think the Colonel mentioned it and David might have too, is you got to think about your outcome and what you need. But then you got to think about ecosystem services. And you got to give them equal weight. You can't. In the past, the Corps used to say, what are you going to make us do to protect this species? Now, the deal is the Corps comes to us and says, this is what we're going to do. This is how we can do this. That's a huge shift in paradigm. But yeah, there's opportunities everywhere. Yes, sir?
Do you have any insight on how climate change is potentially affecting or changing lower Mississippi?
Go look at the river today. We're seeing increase in major floods frequency, let's say. We had our biggest winter flood ever recorded a few years ago. That was amazing to have a flood of that size during the winter. That doesn't happen, but it's happening. I can't remember the numbers, but we've had a number of 500-year floods, a number of 100-year floods in the last 20 years. We're going to have to quit calling them 100 and 500-year floods. We got to come up with a new name because it doesn't work anymore. Now, we've got people claiming out there that that's not due to climate change, it's the Corps' fault. And they say that because the amount of rainfall hasn't increased that much through the watershed. And it hasn't increased. I think it's about a 15% increase. That's a lot of water. But what makes more change to us down here than how much water is when it falls and where it falls. In the middle of summer in the last few years, if you think about the hot times we have in the winters down here, and if you look at the weather map and those loops of the jet stream are getting crazy, they're coming lower and lower. That's climate change. It's not necessarily, like the Colonel said, I believe, it's not necessarily that we're seeing a huge increase in temperatures, but we're seeing craziness in weather patterns. Yes, ma'am.
Is there concern that these more frequent flood events could impact the nesting of the interior least terns?
It's definitely impacting the nesting of the interior least tern, but we've reached kind of a tipping point with interior least tern, thank goodness. And I mean, we've had high water nesting seasons for 4 years running, I believe, 4 or 5 years running. And that's got to have an impact on them. But we counted the terns this year during the high water season, which was nesting season, which I was really worried we were going to find a lot less terns. We counted over 9,000 birds, adult birds, nesting out there in a really confined area. The other thing about terns, too, is they're turning out to be, our intelligence tells us, they're turning out to be incredibly resilient. We thought they had to have just this little specific habitat. Well, these birds are nesting on rooftops, they're nesting in sand and gravel mines, they're nesting in industrial pits. When the river gets up like this, they'll try to nest in roads, they'll try to nest in fields. They're going to try to nest wherever they can. Now, their success probably won't be high, but these birds live 20 years, 20 plus years. I think the oldest recapture we've ever had was 24 years. That's a long lifespan for a little tiny bird. So each bird only has to reproduce once in that 20-something years to replace itself. What, they're bigger than I said? Go ahead.
No, I wanted to sort of follow up on what Todd was asking, which I think was, how can we do this elsewhere? So actually, we meaning you and many others, 25 years actually getting to this point of having success, having great partnerships, making a difference with no dedicated funding. So the young people in the room need to be advocates for the lower Mississippi River, or the Mississippi River, because we're only now getting to Congress to where they might provide a little bit of money.
Yeah.
The Upper River environmental program is $20 million, $22 million a year. Congress and you taxpayers allocate. There's $0 for an a dedicated environmental program.
That's one of the reasons why it's not getting attention, too, is because it doesn't require dollars. I know 8 years ago, we were invited to Washington to talk to some bureaucrats. Steve and I were. And they walked in, they were all excited. They said, we want to take this nationwide. How many full-time positions do you need? We said, well, we don't need any, because the whole point of it is we rely on existing ones. And I said, oh, okay. Well, how much money do you need? How many millions do you need to really kick this program off? I said, we don't need any. That's the whole point. You use existing resources. We need some training. And the light went out of these people's eyes because... Well, no, to do cooperative conservation, we don't need money. We need money to maintain the agencies. We need money to maintain programs. We need money to conduct intelligence, right? ERDC needs money. The Corps needs money for maintenance. We need money. Everybody needs money.
This is the engineering with nature hotbed of America.
Yeah.
And it should be.
So, is that it?
Okay, well, thank you for those questions, and go ahead, thank you. Mr. Hartfield has said that he'll be around for a little while, so if you'd like to catch him and have any other questions or comments, he'll be around for a little bit. We're going to give our presentations at this time. Mr. Hartfield, we're unable to pay you for taking out the time from your schedule to come out and visit with us.
I get something from these guys sometime.
But we certainly would love to present you with a couple of things that we thought
Ooh, isn't that beautiful?
that you may enjoy. This photograph was taken by one of our local wildlife photographers, Mr. Richard Stewart. And I knew when I looked through all of his many beautiful pictures, I said, that's the one. So I wanted to make sure you had that. This is also a bag of ERDC swag.
Swag.
Yes, so you have that. And also, Dr. Bridges has a presentation.
Wow.
Well,
Oh, great. I want that.
Well, I just, I wanted to thank you, Paul, because you illustrate very well for us today that throughout one's life and career, you can wear a variety of uniforms, but still serve, right? And there are many ways that we can protect and defend, right, the values that we hold dear, including the natural values and bounties that our prosperity in this country is based on. And you illustrated it quite well today. And I just want to thank you. You have clearly you've been a pioneer in engineering with nature for some time. And your Redmond Point project is in this book. And there aren't too many hard copies of this floating around, but I want to present this to you and thank you again for this work. And we're looking forward to having more projects from the river in the next volume in 2 years. So thank you very much, Paul.
Again, this is an alternative universe. I don't know where I am. Thank you all.
Okay, as we begin to close, I would just like to draw your attention to the last page of your program. What you'll see listed there are all of the partners, and I use that word intentionally because that means that there's mutual benefit. We have partners from our local schools, universities, regionally, organizations, and some of our research programs and initiatives throughout the Corps. So we want to recognize all of our partners. And certainly from my perspective as the lead on our Earth Day celebration, I have special thanks for all of the offices and the organizations that you see below. There is no way that I can rattle off everyone's name that has helped with this, but you know who you are. And one thing that I will say, and I have to say this, everyone that I asked or made a request to, they did not hesitate to help and support. And that also shows the power of ERDC and our people and how well we all work together. So all of you that have helped me to pull all this together, I thank you so much for all of that support that you've given me. And there is one other thing that I would like to point out is that we are going to have a tree planting when we dismiss from the auditorium. Definitely our students, we would love for you to be out, and Dr. Pittman, Colonel Beckman, Mayor Flaggs. If you will join us also, we would love to have some photo opportunities with you as we plant our tree. Now, we do have Dr. Burton Sudell, who is one of our research biologists in the environmental lab. He's also a part-time horticulturist. So, Dr. Sudell, do you want to come up and just give brief remarks on the species of tree that we'll be planting and the location? Dr. Sudell.
Okay, I dressed to plant the tree, not to address the assembly here today. But in any case, we gave it a lot of thought about what tree to plant because we thought it was going to be an important tree to plant, that provides a lot of symbolic meaning to Earth Day, certainly going forward. And so we got a lot of input, and I decided that we wanted to go with a variety of our state tree, the Magnolia grandiflora. Now, we do recognize that the state tree itself can grow about, 50 feet tall and about 100 feet wide. And so I didn't want to quite take that much space up in front of the headquarters building here. So we decided to go with the named dwarf variety of the southern magnolia. So it's called the teddy bear. And so I think it's going to be a very beautiful specimen tree. It'll eventually grow to about 25 to 30 feet tall and about half as wide. And I think it'll provide 4 seasons of interest and will live a very long time right out here in the front yard of our headquarters building. So I'm looking forward to taking care of it and make sure it thrives for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Irving. Well, so again, thank you all for coming today. I appreciate everyone that's here. It shows that you have a passion, as I do, for protecting our environment and recognizing how we can continue to conserve our species, saving and protecting them all. Now, at this time, I would just ask that we assemble ourselves, those that are going to participate. The tree planting, if you leave out of the back rear door to your right going out and head back out the front entrance, we will meet on the right side of the headquarters building. There's a little red flag pointing down where we will plant our tree. And Dr. Pittman, Colonel Beckman, Mayor Flaggs, if you will certainly join us, we have shovels for you. Okay. Thank you all for coming, and happy Earth Day.